Well, welcome to Principles with Cory and Logan. Logan, it's good to have you back, man. It's been just a few weeks, but you've been out for 52 weeks on a 52-week hunt, it feels like. No, I'm playing, but you've been out hunting and really wanted to dive into some of that. And I know that was something that when me and you first started talking about, that was kind of something you wanted to do and talked about it. And man, you made the thing happen, right? So
Yeah, it's good to be back. Always bittersweet coming back. Lots of things you miss, but then it's nice to have all some of the worries of day to day life just kind of fall away as you get outside into creation and just get to see a lot of natural beauty and start to. It's like layers fall away a day or two at a time.
yeah. Well, so you went hunting, but where did you go?
So I drove from Tupelo through Arkansas and Oklahoma and Colorado. Met up with my uncle and went to Wyoming to hunt antelope for a couple of days, and then down to Utah to hunt elk for a few days. Back to Wyoming for a day or two, and then back to Utah, and then back across uh, to Tupelo. So. I think by the odometer, it was about 6,500 miles that we did in the
Wow.
truck.
And you went out there to hunt antelope and elk, right?
That's right.
Did you get anything?
Um, at the end of the trip, we finally got an antelope on the ground. So it was a lot of hiking and a lot of work. And I flew out and scouted twice for elk. I was into elk 5 out of 6 scouting days, and then saw elk 1 out of 8 days on the actual hunting trip. So learned a lot about false sense of confidence.
Thought you were ready.
Yeah, I think it's Mike Tyson that said everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And man, we took a couple on the chin. Elk hunting for sure.
So, and you and I talked about that. So you went out there, and they were like, I mean, you saw elk everywhere, and then when the season opened up, it's like, where'd they go?
They left.
Yeah.
They know right when the season starts. They make a living staying alive, and they start seeing people hike around there wearing orange, and they get out of there.
So we out.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of different factors at play. I think that our process was really good from a preparation standpoint. I've made some good friends with some local folks, and made some good friends with some guides and outfitters, and just in kind of checking around here and there throughout the trip, was getting really consistent feedback from them that this year has just been pretty odd.
Yeah.
That region has tons of wildfires. And so the smoke has made the animals behave a lot differently than they behave in typical years. And so that in combination with an abnormally dry year in the regions that we were, food sources and water sources have gotten a little bit more scarce. And so they've kind of retreated to sanctuary in some places that I wasn't able to find.
Yeah. So, curious. I mean, did you grow up hunting, like deer hunting, duck hunting, all that kind of stuff?
The first time I hunted was in November of 2017. So I grew up in Northeast Mississippi, not hunting.
Yeah.
Which is pretty abnormal.
It is, man. And yeah, I grew up the same way. I was raised with mom and my grandmother for the early part of my life, and stepdad came, but he wasn't into hunting either. I do remember going hunting one time with my cousin out behind our house in the pasture, and we had set up. I knew nothing about hunting, but my grandmother comes out there yelling, Cory, do you know where your cousin is? You know, and I know you can't hunt like that. So I'm curious. So what got you into hunting?
So one of my best friends, Chris Bennett, who we've had on the show before, finally dragged me out there in November of 17, the week before Thanksgiving, and I killed my first deer. And I've just always been into health and fitness, and that kind of connected the dots to the food that I put into my body. And just kind of as we did the the cleaning and the butchering process, and seeing that go from a live animal to food on the table, and having that connection with my food, I was pretty hooked very quickly. Some of the things came in instinctually, and then some of the things have been pretty eye-opening, how far we are removed from the things that have to happen for meat to be on our table.
Yeah.
And so I've really enjoyed kind of removing that disconnect. I've definitely found I'm a lot less wasteful. I mean, we're using everything for organs, bones for stock. I mean, I cook eggs in elk stock every morning. So we really make an effort we pray for the Lord to bless the hunt, and then that we will be good stewards of what it yields, and really, really try very hard to not waste anything. It's a lot different than just going and grabbing a steak somewhere, or a hamburger, or whatever it may be. So that was kind of the first thing, and I'm very obsessive by nature, and it was like, okay, where can this take me? What can I do with it? What types of food can I get? What types of experiences can I have? What types of relationships can I build? And it's just really snowballed. That first year I hunted quite a bit for whitetail, and then that following spring we went to Texas to hunt pigs, wild hogs, and by that next fall I'd been on my first elk hunt and mule deer hunt, and then it's just gained more and more momentum since then, from staying in hotels to hunting to staying in a tent and going 6 or 7 miles deep into a national forest where you don't see anybody for 3 or 4 days at a time.
Man. Dude, that'd be awesome. I do want to go back to you. You literally, like, I know you're listening to this, and he says he uses everything. You use everything. Like I mean, we talked about the bone, and I was talking with Chris. You mentioned Chris Bennett that got you started. He mentioned to me the other day that you guys cook the heart.
We cook and eat the heart.
So, all right, you got to tell me about that.
So I found out about that from a show called Meat Eater that can be found on Netflix or meateater.com.
I've seen
it's
that.
a very pretty renowned author, Stephen Ranella. He's got a few books, cookbooks, survival books, hunting books. He's got a good book on the history of the American buffalo. And there was an episode where they ate the heart, and we're kind of talking about the nutritional value. And so I started researching it, and I was like, wow, this is like one of the most nutrient dense foods that we can possibly eat. So we're like, let's try it. So we took one from one of the deer that we killed, and filleted it up and seared it medium rare and put some salt on it. It's actually really good. So there are tons of different recipes you can do with it. And it's really good. And the more we started looking into it, the organ meats are when a wolf pack kills an animal in the wild, normally the alpha wolf is going to go claim the heart or the liver, because it's the most nutrient dense in the body.
Yeah, Chris was telling me you guys have tried to I guess you fillet it open, you scoop out all the, I guess, the capillaries and all that, and you kind of sliver it up and put it into
just clean it up, nice and clean. And if you didn't know what it was, I think you'd have a hard time figuring it out on your own.
Yeah, he said it was good too. Yeah, he says it's good.
It's great. We like to do it as an appetizer, and I really haven't run into anybody that didn't like it.
So do you serve it and have guests over, and you just serve it and say, hey, just try some of that?
I don't like to sucker anybody.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Chris would probably go that route. His wife does not like wild game at all. So there's been some temptation before to serve some deer, some elk without saying what it was. But no, typically I like to tell people, and if they want to partake and enjoy the connection and kind of the story behind the meal, then great. And if they don't, then we can have whatever else we're eating with it.
That's it, man. That's it. So you kind of, again, you just started a couple of years ago and started with deer hunting. Now you've kind of gone all in. I love the, see, one of the things I guess I always kind of pictured deer hunting, and sorry, deer hunters out there, getting up in the cold and just sitting there didn't really excite me. I've told my friends I would much rather be like the dog that goes out and chases them out, be the active one. Anyway, so you kind of going from that, but I really like that thought and the idea of going out into like the national parks and going deep in there. And I mean, just that sounds pretty awesome. So kind of, what is your favorite kind of hunt? Is it the elk or the mule deer? Or?
My favorite kind is open country spot and stalk, which is let's find some open country, let's hike up high, let's use our binoculars and see for 4 to 6 miles, see what's out there, and then let's make a plan on how we can make a move on it. That's my absolute favorite thing to do, and elk for me is the pinnacle right now. They're just pretty awesome.
Well, I know you and I kind of talked about it. I mean, you got topography maps and everything, and see, that sounds really cool to me.
I didn't know how to read a map a year ago. 2 years ago. I pitched a tent for the first time last year. So I'm kind of learning a lot of woodsmanship and hunting at the same time, and just really enjoying, I really enjoyed archaeology, geology, and things like that when I was growing up, and kind of reconnecting with some of those things, and learning how to read those maps, learning how to read the terrain, becoming aware of the weather and how that's going to impact animal behavior, also my ability to survive, those sorts of things. You don't want to get caught in those, those high mountain thunderstorms and different things. And so there's just so much to learn. The more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah, man. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I was an Eagle Scout, right? So whenever we were in the Boy Scouts, I can remember one of the things that we did was learn how to, I wish I remember how to do all this now, but like you're talking about with the maps, how to read maps and stuff. But one night I remember he said, pick out one piece of equipment and go out in the woods and spend the night, right? And we found a tarp and maybe a string. We tied it. Anyway, we made our own tent and slept in that. So, I mean, as you're talking about that, it kind of reminded me of all that. It sounds kind of cool. So,
yeah, it's just something that I didn't really do growing up, and have really, really fallen in love with just being outside and enjoying creation. And I also love health and fitness and competition, and there's no competition with higher stakes.
That's right, man. You and I were talking the other day too, and you're telling about, it was the antelope that you got. Mm-hmm. You're like crawling on your belly, and kind of share with us that.
Well, they're different. I'd never hunted antelope before, and drew a tag. So the way that works is you put in an application, and it's kind of similar to a lottery, and ended up drawing a tag in Wyoming, and have never been where I hunted, didn't know anybody, and just hunted public land, BLM and state of Wyoming land in that particular unit where my tag was assigned. And so, my uncle and I started looking together on the map, where do we think antelope will be? Where are our options to hunt that we have access? And went out and had a great opening day. He got an antelope. I didn't. We went and hunted elk. When we came back, I came back with a couple of other friends for a day, and the antelope were not anywhere near where they were a week earlier. So we had to kind of resort to plan B and plan C, and hiked in a mile, didn't see anything, another mile, didn't see anything, another mile, ended up 4 miles deep, and finally saw our first antelope. I had a doe tag, and it was a buck, but we figured we'd kind of try to stalk over to it and see if something was with it. There was nothing, but then we saw something a mile and a half back the other direction. So kind of took off running out of sight, used the terrain features to stay out of sight. And the cool thing about antelope, and the frustrating thing about antelope, is that they're typically herded up So they're fairly easy to spot, but they have insane eyesight.
Yeah.
They can see in excess of a mile very well.
But you said the radius too, right?
And their radius, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like 270 or 300 degrees that they can see.
Yeah.
So they're and they can run 65 miles an hour. So their natural defense mechanism is that they stay in a herd and they get in wide open spaces because they can outrun anything and they can generally see a predator first. So finding them is generally not a problem. Killing them is difficult. So generally people have pretty high excitement antelope hunts because you see a lot of them, but they're hard to get close to. And then once you do get close, they're very small and they're very twitchy. So
twitchy.
Yeah. So they very alert, very cagey. So we ended up kind of stalking this group of antelope for about an hour and using the terrain, and they would move. And it was interesting. They had, there's a group of about 10 of them, and they kind of had like 2 that seemed to be assigned to be like sentinels, and just 8 of them were laying down and 2 of them were like up walking around and keeping watch.
Wow.
So we ended up being able to use the wind and use the land and get close enough to be able to get one down, but it was quite the challenge and just a ton of fun.
Yeah. And you mentioned that the wind was blowing so hard the first time you shot, the wind just carried the bullet in front of the antelope.
I've never seen anything like it here. That my bullet moved about 4 feet.
Wow.
I thought I'd compensated pretty well, and I was wrong.
Yeah, but you're also saying that the wind was blowing so hard that when you shot it, they didn't even hear it.
They
so
could
you got
not hear it.
able to get another shot.
Yeah.
Have you ever had antelope before?
I had not.
Okay.
Until now.
Okay, so you've had have you eaten some now?
I've had some now.
Okay, what'd you fix?
We just had antelope tenderloins with some steamed broccoli, and it's fine meat, but it is very sagey.
Sagey, okay.
I guess that's probably because they're feeding on sagebrush.
Yeah.
So whoever said you are what you eat was right.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting.
Yeah.
That just if you put an antelope somewhere else and it ate something different, it would smell and taste completely different. But that's the first time that I've really had meat from an animal where I watched it eat sage and then it tasted like sage.
Wow. I just kind of thinking about that. Like you said, you mentioned earlier, I mean, because of the processing system, just taking us away from what it is like. I mean, you're sitting there watching it eat, and then you kill it and you clean it and you cook it. It's kind of like when you cook food, it seems like the food you cook, it always tastes better than what you would have somewhere else because you're attached to it.
Right.
So anyway, I think that's pretty cool. What's next then?
Got to go back for elk.
Yeah, you still have the tag, right?
My tags are still good through
Yeah.
mid-December for one, and then into January for another. So working on trying to figure out when I can swing it to get back after them, and my vision statement hasn't been fulfilled yet. So got to get back out there and get back after them. And luckily, most people are their tags are expired, and I think the pressure will subside a little bit, and maybe get a little bit of precipitation and some moisture out there, and knock some of that wildfire smoke away, put some of those fires out, and see if they'll kind of settle back down and get back to a little bit less erratic behavior.
Yeah. You go to hunt something like that, and you're on your belly crawling, you got the topography map, and you got a scope map. I'm just curious, can you even go back to deer hunting now? Like, what is it like deer hunting now?
I've definitely fallen in love with elk hunting.
Yeah.
I love the animal itself. They're just incredible. They're just like giant forest horses that are kind of crossed with, I don't know if you've ever heard them when they're vocal during their breeding season, but they kind of sound like dinosaurs when they're bugling and screaming back and forth.
Wow.
You can Google elk bugle and hear that. It's insane.
Wow.
And when you watch them do that, it's something else. I've never seen anything like it. That being said, I still love white-tailed deer hunting around here, but I kind of describe it as active versus passive hunting. One of them is you're definitely going to have a better chance if you sit in a tree stand and play the wind, but you still, to be a successful deer hunter, it may be manipulating the landscape through building food plots or understanding pinch points or understanding wind patterns or when cold fronts are coming through and what breeding behavior is going to look like, and how their biology affects how they move and what they need and how you can intercept them. It's just such a mental game. And you can ruin an entire season of hunting by sitting in the wrong place with the wrong wind and educate that deer that you're going after, and it's gone. It'll change its patterns, and breeding will be over, and you're not seeing it. He's not coming back until March, and your season's done, and you blew it. So it's kind of a year-round. How can we learn the ecosystem and the specific animals' behaviors? Versus, I really do love the spot. Start getting up high, checking out the landscape, and just enjoying some different topography and terrain than we get in Mississippi when we go out west. And it's like the sunsets and the sunrises in Wyoming and Montana and these places, it's like they last an hour.
Wow. Yeah. So, I'm picturing you guys, you say, and you go out there and you're 4 or 5 miles in. How do you get, and say you get an elk, how do you get that big bad boy out of there?
When the shooting starts, when the shooting stops, that's when the work starts. For sure. So for this trip, we did 85 miles is what we hiked. Average elevation was about 8,000 feet. So you're not 10,000 plus feet like you might be in some parts of Colorado, but still pretty high elevation, especially coming from 250 feet above sea level. So definitely some challenging atmospheric conditions, and then you're dealing with it was 70 degrees in the day and 30 degrees at night while we were there. So you're kind of packing for a range of temperature and weather, and then carrying all your food and camp on your back. So it's a 40 or 50 pound pack and some miles, and then once you get them on the ground, you're talking about a 600 or 700 pound animal and about a 30 to 40% meat yield. And if you bring if like I like bone in meat, I like to use the bones for stock. So you're talking about taking probably 50 to 60% of that weight out. So it requires a butchering process, and then quarter them. You may skin them, you may not skin them, depending on how you want to handle your meat, and you start hiking.
So you do all that like right there after you get them.
Right there on the ground in the field.
So I don't know how much do they typically weigh? What would you say?
The cow that I harvested last year weighed about 600.
600.
So you're talking about, I got about 200 pounds of actual meat that went to the freezer. So, after trimming and all that stuff that the processor did, I mean, it was, 250, 300 pounds went there.
Yeah, man, you got to have a lot of different skill set. It sounds like for that you got the mapping, and also maybe how did you learn all that? I guess is it
as I go.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That's what I was wondering.
Lots of podcasts, lots of YouTube.
Yeah.
I won a trip to a hunting summit this year and spent 3 days with some guys that do it for a living, and then lots of other like-minded folks. And then I've been super fortunate to have people like Chris and my uncle Jason that have kind of mentored me through a lot of it. But definitely figuring out something that I don't know every single time I go out.
Yeah.
I find a
That's
new
exciting
way to mess,
too, I know.
I find a new way to mess something up
Yeah.
and check that off the list, whether it's, reading the wind for shooting,
Yeah.
like it was in Wyoming. The year before, I had my ballistics wrong and had entered some of my math incorrectly on my drop chart for my rifle, and it cost me an opportunity. So you just don't realize until you start tugging on that string what all there is behind it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I've really, really enjoyed is learning the marksmanship, learning the bushcraft, learning the biology, learning the terrain, and that's just learning all the gear.
And the chefing,
Yeah,
the cooking,
yeah, all kinds of different things and new skill sets, and it's just kind of trying to pick one or two of those things up and master it to some extent every year.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. So you got somebody who's only deer hunted, and maybe they're I'd like to try something exciting like that. Like, for you, where was the best starting point?
Just to start.
Just start.
Just
yeah,
to
man,
start. I hear if I had $1 for every time I get back from a trip and somebody says, "Man, one day I want to go hunt elk," or "One day I want to go hunt mule deer," I would say, just book the trip and then figure it out.
Yeah,
that's
Ooh,
really
that's what I'm talking about. I like that kind of.
That's really all you can do. I mean, you're gonna not have some of the right gear when you get there.
Yeah.
You're gonna not have learned something that you wish that you would have known. I've pulled up to so many trailheads and then there's a fence there and it's, private property that didn't show on the map. It's like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
Or you pull up and there's 30 other trucks in the parking lot. You're like, this is probably not the best place to hunt today.
Yeah.
Or you pull up and you get out there to hunt and there are a bunch of hikers with dogs. Well, probably not going to be a lot of game animals there.
Yeah.
Just hanging out. You just got to book it and go. And it all depends on what you want to get out of it. Do you want to just go kill something with big antlers? Pay a guide. Are you wanting to go get the experience and you're okay if you come back like I did with no elk and you want to experience, God's creation and doing something really hard? Just book the trip and go hunt public land and get a tag. So there's just tons of ways you can do it. It's fully customizable. But there's no reason to wait.
Yeah. I like that. Man, just do it. Do hard things. You said, you guys you did 85 miles. How many days is that?
10.
About 10. Yeah. Man, that's I like that. And one of the things John Maxwell says all the time, exactly what you said, is somebody will ask him, where do I want to be an author? Like, where do I even start at? He said, just start writing. Just start writing. You just got to start writing.
Yeah, you're never going to have it all figured out. And by the way, everything changes every year anyway.
Yeah.
The animals go to a different place. A new development comes in, or the government sells off this little piece of public land that was your honey hole, or the quotas change and there's not a tag available there anymore. And every state's different. You just got to, just dive in.
Yeah.
I would, really encourage people, if you are interested in it, you can reach out to me. I love helping. I actually took 2 people on their first elk hunt this year.
Wow.
And it was awesome. And
Yeah.
we learned a lot of stuff together.
Yeah.
But pick a state, pick something, find a mentor, people are not just going to share their spot, but find a way that you can add value, whether it's, hey, I'll come and, I'll film for you, or, hey, I'll come and help carry some of the weight. Whatever you can do to get out there, there's really no replacement for time in the field.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. This is, for me, it's kind of definitely a different topic that I've even thought about listening into, but man, that's exciting. I like the sound of the challenge and learning new things, and how every time it's different. That's really cool. So I've enjoyed kind of getting hear your other stories about it too. But any other thing you want to leave with the people that are listening that about your trip or even going into that kind of stuff?
Oh, well, I asked my wife about halfway through the trip. I had some coverage in one of the national forests, and I was like, why do I always pick stuff that's hard?
Yeah.
Whether it's working out or soccer or hunting, why do I pick the stuff that's difficult? But man, it just teaches you a lot about yourself,
Yeah.
and it just makes you better when you come back.
Yeah.
Doing something difficult every day is going to just give you that edge. And I can't express enough how much I've enjoyed that connection with my food, and becoming more resourceful and less wasteful. Everybody can't do it. There's not enough land and not enough animals for 330 million Americans to all go hunt. But if more people did it, we could probably reduce our footprint in terms of factory farming and have some positive impacts on our environment and health.
Yeah. I mean, I think about you're doing 85 miles in 10 days, 8.5 miles a day. But not only that, and you guys are going up 8,000 feet from where we are here in little old Mississippi, 250, above sea level. So just get out being active. And, kind of going back to just getting started, I used to have, I still do, people will talk about, what do I need to do about getting healthy and getting fit? And it's like, what do you like doing? Whatever you like doing, just get out and be active. If you like playing badminton, go hit that badminton. If you like hunting, get out and get moving. Go, maybe it's not hunting season, but maybe go out and scope out some land or whatever.
That's what I did. I went out and, I found a $100 flight one time and, flew out and scouted for a couple of days. And it was fun. I had a good time. I got to walk around and look at deer and look at elk and, meet some people and make some connections and see some awesome sunsets and some awesome landscapes. And it's hard to have a bad day out there. It's just amazing how things start to just kind of fade away. Day 1 or 2, they're generally, for me at least, kind of stressful. Trying to disconnect. And then by day 3, 4, 5, it's like, now I'm not worried about emails. Now I'm not worried about finances. Now I'm not worried about, and eventually you kind of settle in. It's like, man, how many layers of things have we stacked on top of ourselves that stress us out that aren't really necessary in day-to-day life? And it's just amazing how you feel after you let some of those things go, and gives you a fresh perspective on, what can we live without and really positively impact the quality of our lives.
Yeah. I love how you live in your life, man. Just living it instead of one days and some days. And when I wrap up here in just a second, but one of the first things I realized coming out of college, I was working with patients in the physical therapy world and be working with some of the elderly. And they say, me and my husband or me and my wife, we always talked about when we retire, we would go do this or we would go travel. And it seems like every time they would retire, that's when kind of life would catch up with them, and they never got to do what they wanted to do. And I told my wife, Kim, I was like, when we get the opportunities, we're never going to put things off. We're going to live life. We're not going to wait, and I love that. So.
Well, it's something that you've taught me. I think you made me commit to some things at the beginning of the year when we started coaching, and you start to get a little bit of momentum, and you can really start to check some things off the list. And my father-in-law passed away in April, and he was 58. He went to work like a normal day and went to the restroom and didn't come out. And we're not promised a tomorrow, so let's put some stuff on the calendar as best we can, obviously within financial means and without sacrificing in other areas, but to the best of our abilities, let's get some stuff done while we can.
That's it. And man, I just want to wrap it up with this. So if anybody is there interested in, man, I'd like to know more about that, or maybe they've got, some excuses. Man, that's got to be expensive. But you mentioned $100 plane flight. Maybe they've got some of the equipment, right? But
yeah, and there are places you can rent things.
Yeah.
There's you can do things as expensively or as cost effectively as you want to a certain extent. I mean, public land that's what our federal income taxes pay for, is to keep that land public for us, and it doesn't cost anything to go park at a trailhead and go hike out there. There's a lot of free resources on YouTube and with podcasts on the how-to, and certainly you don't want to just go out there in a cotton t-shirt when it's 20 degrees and go try to spend the night. But, there are ways to get started and not break the bank. I always hear the guys on the podcast talking about all the newest gear. And then at the end, they're like, but granddad killed a lot of elk in his flannel shirt and his blue jeans.
Yeah.
So, there's never going to be a perfect time to start anything, whether it's a business, whether it's hunting, whether it's getting in shape. Like, just go take a walk.
Yeah.
Just drink a little bit of water instead of a Coke. Just get started.
That's right. So if somebody did want to ask you some questions, they had some questions about it, or say, hey, Logan, I know you want to go out there and get that tag, and I want to learn from you. I'll pay for your air flight and for, but seriously, if somebody did have some questions about, man, how do you get started? What would be the best way to contact you?
Just email me at lbayers91@gmail.com, and I'm more than happy to help. I love helping people get into this. I'm pretty passionate about it, and just have loved the experiences I've been able to have the past couple of years. And it doesn't stop there. The meat comes home, and we'll have dinner parties with our friends, and talk about the stories and show the pictures of the landscapes and different things. So it's been phenomenal, and looking forward to lots more adventures.
Awesome, man. Well, hope you guys have enjoyed this episode of Principles. I think it's been awesome. I know it's been different from some of the other episodes, but Logan has some great stuff in here, and living life, man, just getting started. Don't put off anything, I think is great. So I hope this has added value to you, and make sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date with any of the upcoming episodes. And you guys have a great day, and God bless.